The Navigating Disability podcast often discusses topics including disability, injury, mental health, and mentions of sensitive issues such as trauma and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care while listening. Welcome to Navigating Disability. Today we're joined by William Ward-Boas, autistic, First Nations, gay, and a passionate self-advocate. William is Deputy Chair of VALID and previously worked Inclusion Australia's Your Choice, Your Rights project, helping people with intellectual disabilities understand their NDIS rights. William is currently a personal advocate for people with disability that may need support. Join us as we talk lived experience, advocacy, and building a more inclusive world. Welcome, William. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Kate. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? It's obviously been a different journey to a lot of other people. How did it start and how did you end up where you are today?
Back when I got my initial diagnosis back in those days, I got labelled mentally retarded on my official file. It actually still has that official writing on my report. And yeah, so I was nonverbal, a very vocal autistic child at the time with intellectual disability, and my parents were told by the person giving me the diagnosis that I would never be able to talk, I'd never be able to learn, I wouldn't be able to be an active member of society, and I wouldn't ever be able to express love or emotions, and that they actually offered to make me a ward of the state at the time. So that was quite confronting for my parents back in, like 2002. And it was really confronting to them, but I've got two older sisters, so my parents were already parents before I came into the picture, and they were like, no, we don't want to take your offer on a fresh start, as they put it in quotation marks. And yeah, they raised me like they did with my two sisters, and the same experience happened to my brother, who's 2 years younger than me. Through that experience, my parents had to seek out their own forms of intervention to help me get speech pathology. I had to engage with community social settings like childcare and trying to adapt into community, and how I learned my vocal ability, which I now can't shut up.
Can you just stop me there for a second, William? Can I just ask a question? You said that you were non-verbal, but very vocal. Could you explain that to me?
So I actually pointed at cupboards if I needed something and start screaming, and my parents had to figure out, okay, is he hungry? Is he just overstimulated? Or is he actually like experiencing sensory overload? So I had to like vocalize literally to communicate.
So it was more the kind of sounds and things like that, not words.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I had to vocalize myself to communicate, and I started speaking at 7. So, yeah, it was lots of learning how to talk through echolalia, and also watching movies. Speech pathology was a big contributor, but also just engaging with community. I absorbed all of that by then. And from then, I went into the specialist education school system, which was hit or miss. And in that setting, there was a lot of children who had divorced parents. So I was quite fortunate to have parents who were quite a solid support at home. But not everybody is fortunate like I was. I consider myself quite privileged in that regard. And there was a lot of negative stigma around the topic of disability, and quite taboo, really, within my peers and student cohorts. And I referred to myself as a teacher's pet because that's how I survived through school. and I had good role models as well as the not so great role models. And I think that's where I kind of got that internalized ableism and homophobia to begin with, because just how negative that environment was. As good as support as I had at home, like absorbing all of that social negativity and those negative stigma and stereotypes, when you're growing up as a teenager, you're like, is what I'm hearing actually what I identify with, or
Yeah.
am I just thinking this way because I'm hearing it so much?
Yeah. And I think that's the hard thing, isn't it? Kids are awful sometimes. And and it's about education and how they're raised and things like that. I don't discount that, but it's hard for any child through school, and when you're having additional needs and things like that, it's polarizing because you don't know where you fit.
Yeah.
So how did that affect your siblings, like your two older sisters and your younger brother? How did that translate for them?
Well, my two older sisters, they were also a solid support growing up. I kind of looked at them as role models too. But my younger brother had very similar experiences, even went to the same specialist education school. So we both had kind of vicarious trauma in that regard into our experiences. But I think it affected home because some of those negative stigmas I heard it so much from not just students, but from some of my not so great teachers. And I started to believe some of those things. And I was like, am I really outside of the basket of typical? Like, am I really that different? And like the attitude before the Human Rights Charter was in place in the specialist education school system, it was, if children were overstimulated, you'd be often locked in a room until you calmed down. And I experienced the quiet room. And, I had to kind of adapt, not just in terms of social stigmas and norms, but also just to survive, really. And my parents were big advocates when I was growing up, and they were like trying to support through that hard time. But after the charter, those restrictive things eased more, but the social load was a bit heavier as I grew up more, because I started to understand things. And I social cues was a terrible experience. Like that was a really heavy learning for me. Um, but in terms of how it impacted my family, I think they were as supportive as they could have been in a hard environment. Because I'm sure you've heard some things about segregated settings, but um, yeah, um, it limits people's social understanding and post school and what that looks like. Um, it might be better now, but segregated schools, it's really a gamble. Like if you get a good one, you get a good one. If you don't, it's quite apparent.
What was different about you, William, back at school? Why did you find it so difficult?
Because I was more naive. I listened to everything people told me, and I believed it like it was biblical, and I didn't question it, because back when you're a teenager, you're kind of hearing all of these things from, it could be teachers, and you go, oh, well, if a teacher says it, it's got to be true, and you don't question them. And maybe some of those negative stereotypes, or uh, even political conversations, like, First Nations people, I didn't actually learn about my identity as First Nations till post high school. So that was a after school experience. But even before then, I kind of think back on my education experience, and there wasn't much in the curricula about First Nations. It was just a very whitewashed like political usual historic story of, you know, Point Cook and whatnot. And I was like, oh, well, if I'm hearing this, then it's got to be right because teachers are saying it. But after school, I was like, there's so much I heard that, you know, it was kind of just put in front of me, and I was like, yeah, it's got to be right. It's got to be right. But then I came to realize it wasn't once I got self-awareness.
So what was your turning point of, you know, starting to question people's opinions? What was the turning point for you?
What a good question. I think that didn't really like start till I was about 17, 18 when I started running into difficulties with my social circle. My relationships was really starting to evolve and change. Personal things with family was going on, where um, you know, like my dad used to work in aged care and he had a serious shoulder injury. And I grew up with a mum who had a couple of car accidents, which affected her physical capability to be a mother. But she was like, she's one of the most intelligent people I know and very, very like socially aware. Um, which is where I get my fierce advocacy from, because let me tell you, superannuation officer back in the day, you need to be a fierce personality to do something like that. And I guess like from learning from what my parents have taught me, but also just a generic like survival of social situations and the special education school system, I had to adapt to survive. And something else is like, because of how negatively, like, I heard so much about disability and like homophobia and whatnot, like, I used to self harm as well. So I was not always embracing of my identity. I was also quite emotionally fragile, I'd put, because I didn't have good regulation strategies when I was growing up. And that only happened through therapy. So I would learn how to emotionally regulate myself, I guess, because that was like 18 years of masking. Then you leave education and you go, oh, this is not what I expected. You're not in this 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. scheduled system. You've got to figure out how to do Centrelink. You've got to figure out how to do bills. You've got to figure out what your future is. And if your mental health goes kaput like mine did in the midst of my childcare course, then you've got to utilize resources and see what is available to utilize. And I've got a therapist, a very good therapist now, 4 or 5 years later, and it's been a lot of work. And I learned my self-acceptance through my advocacy work, actually, because I had to learn from people, not just in terms of advocates who supported people with disability, but people with disability who advocated for deinstitutionalization and advocated for equal rights and equal marriage. And I learned through Amaze Autism advocacy in terms of like, this is what is actual factual information. And everything I had like developed internally with my self-harms and myself internalized homophobia and ableism, that was kind of undone. It was undone through my advocacy work, because it was like, maybe I didn't need to think this way to begin with. It was just a real eye-opener, and I went, wow, I didn't need to mask for all of those years. I didn't need to be afraid of my sexuality. I can love a man if I love a man. Like, you know, it was a really big learning.
So do you think, oh, sorry, Kate, I'm just one more question, sorry. Just with all the challenges you went through, do you think it's made you more resilient now and you're able to cope with the world better? or do you still find you have that kind of, you're scared of the world and, you know, you're more timid rather than stronger?
I think I identify as being stronger. Like, I've had to formulate my own emotional walls to survive some of those scenarios. And I think it's how do you identify trauma as you being timid or you being strong, really? Because in the end, it's just survival, and you learn how to, like, adapt to those really scary scenarios, or self-hatred, or and you don't really know what to do with it until you have like a professional in front of you, or an advocate, in fact, going, well, it's okay to hate yourself, but you're not the problem. And that's when I started to learn, okay, well, maybe society is a bit of a problem. And that's where I started listening to people and incredible advocates. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just interested, and I don't really know how to ask it, so please don't take offense at anything that I say. At what point did you, I'm going to say, realize or acknowledge that you were gay? And was that a part of, because that's separate to disability, so you've got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Is it an intersection of everything coming to a head that made it so hard, or do you sort of compartmentalize them and treat them all individually?
I just identify my entire being as one identity, like being autistic with intellectual disability, having mental health, neurodiversity, First Nations background, and being part of LGBTIQ. It's all it's a cocktail made together, and there I am. But I think, when did I realize? I think when I saw Keanu Reeves in the movie Speed, like back when I was like 9 or something, I was like,
That
oh,
movie, love that movie.
yeah, it's like, oh yeah, that's a good looking male. And then through school, I started developing crushes, and I was like, I started having flings, and I started realizing, oh, okay, well, maybe I don't find women attractive, like, and or sexually identify with women, I should say. And like, I attempted, like, to be with a woman, but I never got past the single pash on the lips. I was like, yep, I know I don't like
I'm
I don't
done.
like this, I don't think. And attempting to go on dates and everything, I was like, maybe if I try this, maybe if I try that, but I never got to the sexual stage, because I was just like, it doesn't seem
Wasn't for you.
appealing for me. So I was just like, okay, well, maybe I'll just go with the male side of things, as tricky as that can be sometimes.
But it's what makes you happy, and that's the most important thing.
If you're a decent male, yep, that
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah. Oh, there's yeah. On any side, I think you've just got to find the right person, yeah?
Yeah.
So what would be your best advice, William, for young kids and teenagers out there that are facing the adversity that you have growing up? What would be your best piece of advice for them to just keep on going and, knowing your truth and honouring your truth?
When you're a kid, it's really hard to kind of develop that self identity, and there's a lot of incredible youth out there. Like, I'm not saying a generalization, saying that everyone's naive, because, like, I was, because of the supportive network I had at home. So I was like, okay, well, there's got to be nicer people out there. But what I'd say is, like, stay close to people who treat you how you deserve, and stay away from people who make you doubt your identity, or make you doubt about how different you are, or think, yeah, find hobbies and find people that really give you joy, because high school is not always easy. It's really not. It's a big transitioning point. And I've got two nieces now, and I used to run a classroom of toddlers and babies, and um, I think there's so much you can do with the resources you have, but you're never alone. There are always other people who have your experiences. Um, so yeah, I learned from my peers. That's why I recommend learn from your peers, learn from the people that love you the right way.
We hear that
Don't
all
give up.
the time, William, that it's so important to be around like-minded people and to be accepted for who you are. And that's what gives you confidence. It's the judgment and the shame that really shrinks you down into nothing.
Absolutely. And like, if I listen to every single negative thing that I heard from people growing up, um, I wouldn't have ended up at the United Nations last year. I wouldn't have worked on incredible projects to help people in a variety of different settings, like residential group homes, or education, or reform. Um, yeah, I think I wouldn't have been able to do any of those things if I didn't see what actual, like, self-advocacy and empowerment looked like to begin with.
What what support, whether it's formal or informal, do you have now around you?
Well, I've got my family, I've got my therapist, and I've also got incredible work friends that I've made through my 6 years of disability advocacy. I've met such incredible people that advocate for the rights of people with disability in varieties of situations. Um, and I see the work they do, and I really feel that sense of, well, I'm not alone in this. As bitter as I can, or sadistic I can get sometimes, I remember that people are still doing the work and people are still being advocated for. And yeah, I think it's really important to create your circle, because family isn't always identified with blood these days. Family is further than that. Biological, if people aren't fortunate enough to have a secure biological family like I did, you create family through other means. Yeah.
What do you hope for the future for yourself? What's next for you?
Um, Goodness, what do I hope next? I want to be able to advocate and continue my work in the same sector. I don't see myself leaving this space anytime soon. Um, and I'm communicating and speaking with a lot of incredible advocates like yourselves, and like Sarah Langston, Katie Gagliardi, and Sarah Forbes, and so on. There's so many incredible names. If I listed every single mentor I've had in my time, it'd take up the rest of your day. But
I'd be here all day.
yeah, honestly, I think I've learned from the real warriors of this space, and the amount of incredible work that people do on the daily, pro bono or paid, or voluntary. I think that just fuels my fire of, like, yeah, I'm surrounded by good people.
I think it's really important that people listening to this, like, mums and dads that worry about their kids and being told that, their kids won't achieve anything or they'll never speak. Look at you go. Your mum and dad were told that you'd never speak and, you would never achieve. And look at you now. So I hope that the listeners can at least take something from that and say, well, there is hope. With the right supports and the right connections, you can achieve anything. So I think it's really important, a really important keynote to take away from this chat. that it is possible.
What I want to know, William, is based on what you know now, and it's always hindsight's a wonderful thing. If you were in your parents' situation, what would you do differently? So if there's another mother or another father out there that has a child like you, what would you want them to know and do to help that child?
Firstly, if you have someone giving you a diagnosis saying, like, your child will never do nothing, don't believe it. Like, that's the first real thing I say, because the doom and gloom, unless they have, like, I don't know where my diagnosis peeps were getting their information from. Probably Autism Speaks, knowing them, but that's a bit public shamey. But if it all depends on the resources you read from, because you will get interpretations depending on who you're speaking to. You know, I've known people who have only known the derogatory, like, medical model, and they didn't know the social model existed till a conversation with me. And I've gone, I don't know where you've been. You've probably been under a rock or something, but there's a whole other model that has been improved on in the last 20 years, and now it's such a big thing. So don't believe the doom and gloom. Love, nurture, support, and time are really important things, and your child can do anything. Like, give them the tools and your acceptance and your love, and you're doing the best you can. The second thing is, always source your own information. Don't always believe what's presented in front of you. It is not the only piece of information. There's always more to the conversation. And the third thing I'd say is, like, listen to motivational speakers. Like, Chloe Hayden was a big motivator for me, because I met her when I was in the youth disability leadership program through Yakavik, I think. And yeah, I listened to her speak and I was like, wow, this is an incredible advocate who does things for children. And now she's on the world stage doing Netflix and more world activism for autistic children, and such a big role model. So there's always people to look for.
And that's a really interesting point that you make. When we started this podcast, it was navigating disability. And after speaking to so many people, we realized that it's actually not about disability, it's about people's ability. And if we can see it from that perspective, which is why we've crossed the dis out on our logo, because I am a firm believer. Oh, I can't see it. What does it say?
Let me get rid of the blur. Hang on. It's disability with the disc cut out.
I love that.
Love it. That's perfect. But I'm a firm believer that every single person has potential if they're given the tools that they need to learn. And everybody is different. Yeah. So I really love. I didn't even have a tattoo. You might have put something in my head. As we start to wrap up, because we are getting on in time, what's your hope for the future, William, in relation to disability, where we are? Obviously, the NDIS is imploding at the moment. Not that this is about the NDIS, but what do you want to see happen for the disability community? I know it's a very open-ended question.
It's a very good question. I think I reflect on a post I made recently on my socials about the absence and solidarity in the world at the moment, and talking about how people are like really volatile to each other at the moment. There's like a lot of distrust and betrayal in the system, and I think we all need to recenter and think about, okay, we're all here for the same reasons in different ways. We're doing advocacy, we're supporting people in really significant system reform where people are losing their rights in the system. I think we need to recalibrate and remember the people we're supporting is the first thing. I intend to be in this space for a long time. In my personal capacity, I support whoever I can, whenever I can. Professionally, I'm opening up my own consultation business, which is really exciting. And organizationally wise, I don't know where I'll go next. I see myself going back to New York to do a speech of some kind, a sub-theme. I just feel that's going to happen at some stage. And I'll continue working with my advocate peers and learn from them, because I've got friends over in the UN right now talking on the big stage to incredible sub-themes like Indigenous people with disability, being involved in social policy. I'm really upset I missed that this year, but also like I know there are very capable advocates talking on the big stage at the moment, so I'm very proud of them at the moment.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, William, and it's been lovely to speak to you, and your insights have been invaluable for our listeners.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, William. Take care.